Prime Minister Drew debunks third country nationals' MOU rumors. Haiti crisis deepens as political deadline looms, and several injured in fourth Spain rail crash in 1 week. Hello and welcome to the ZIZ Midday Major Newscast. Today is Thursday, the 22nd day of January, and I am Jasmine Thomas. First, on the local scene, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis has moved to clarify details of its Memorandum of Understanding with the United States on third country nationals amid growing public speculation. Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew says the agreement applies only to CARICOM nationals who are unable to return to their home countries and does not include non-CARICOM nationals.
Least than that, the MOU does not say this, and we did not negotiate that. And so I want to completely debunk that.
He stressed that St. Kitts and Nevis retains full discretion to accept or reject any individual under the arrangement, and that persons with convictions for violent or sexual offences are excluded. The Prime Minister also reiterated that his first responsibility is to St. Kitts and Nevis, saying all decisions are guided by national interest, capacity and security. Officials have also confirmed that the agreement does not affect St. Kitts and Nevis's discretion to grant tourist, business, student or non-immigrant visas and does not impact the country's existing immigration policies. And the government of St. Christopher and Nevis has taken another step in strengthening bilateral relations with Taiwan through a student visit to the country's permanent mission to the United Nations in New York. The visit was facilitated through the Permanent Mission of the United Nations in collaboration with the Embassy of St. Christopher and Nevis in Taiwan and involved a delegation of students from the L.T. Brown School in Taiwan. The students were given an overview of the work of the Permanent Mission, the role of St. Christopher and Nevis within the United Nations system, and the importance of diplomacy in advancing national development and international cooperation. They also learned about multilateral negotiations, United Nations committees, and how small states advocate for their interest on the global stage. Permanent representative to the United Nations Ambassador Mutrice Williams emphasized the value of engaging young people in diplomacy and international affairs. She said such experiences help inspire youth to become active and engaged global citizens, while also strengthening people-to-people connections between St. Kitts and Nevis and Taiwan. Minister Councillor Eustace Wallace also addressed the students, sharing his own experience with educational exchanges and highlighting the importance of exposure to multilateral diplomacy, particularly for small states. St. Christopher and Nevis's ambassador to Taiwan, Donya Francis, noted that educational exchange remains a cornerstone of the long-standing friendship between the two countries and said initiatives like this help to reinforce mutual understanding and cooperation. The government of St. Christopher and Nevis says the initiative reflects its continued commitment to education, youth engagement, and constructive bilateral and multilateral partnerships, including within the United Nations framework. Over 11,000 cruise passengers arrived in St. Kitts on Wednesday as 3 vessels docked at Port Zante, continuing a strong week for cruise tourism. A total of 11,185 passengers arrived aboard the Allure of the Seas, Celebrity Apex, and Marella Explorer 2. The Allure of the Seas arrived from St. Thomas with 6,435 passengers. The Celebrity Apex sailed in from Puerto Rico with 2,858 passengers, while the Marella Explorer 2 brought 1,892 passengers. The majority of passengers disembarked to explore the island pushing the weekly total of cruise visitors to 33,216. Cruise activity is expected to remain high, with 3 more vessels scheduled to berth at Port Zante today. The Celebrity Beyond, Odyssey of the Seas, and Silver Ray are also expected to arrive. Their continued influx of cruise passengers highlights St. Kitts' position as a key destination on the Caribbean cruise circuit and the ongoing contribution of cruise tourism to the local economy. We now take a look at news on the regional scene. This situation in Haiti is being described as critical as the country approaches a key political transition deadline in February, according to senior United Nations officials. Briefing the UN Security Council, head of the UN Integrated Office in Haiti, Carlos Ruiz Monsieur, urged Haitian leaders to avoid further political divisions and focus on completing the transition and holding elections. While recent steps, including the adoption of an electoral decree and the release of a voting calendar, were described as positive, the UN warned that the security situation continues to worsen. Armed gangs have expanded their control across key economic and agricultural areas, carrying out coordinated attacks and forcing thousands from their homes. The UN reports that the murder rate in 2025 rose by nearly 20% compared to the previous year. Some security progress has been made through police operations supported by the UN-authorized gang suppression force, including the reopening of major roads in Port-au-Prince and the Artibonite region. However, officials say those gains remain fragile. The UN Office on Drugs and Crime also warned that Haiti's gangs have become more organized, with clear leadership structures and expanded revenue streams, such as extortion and trafficking in drugs and weapons. The humanitarian crisis continues to deepen, with more than 6 million people in need of assistance, and Haiti remaining one of the least funded humanitarian responses in the world. The Trinidad and Tobago Ministry of Education has issued a clarification following public backlash over hair and grooming rules circulated by Faizabad Secondary School. The controversy emerged after a school document outlining restrictions on female hairstyles circulated on social media. The guidelines included limits on hair length, bun size, and prohibited certain styles, with images that prompted accusations of racial and cultural bias. Parents and advocates criticized the rules as discriminatory and unnecessarily punitive, arguing that schools should prioritize education over policing students' appearance. The issue intensified after a contract was shared online showing that parents and students were required to agree to the school's grooming rules for the 2026 academic year. In response, the ministry reiterated that the National School Code of Conduct does not prescribe or prohibit specific hairstyles. Instead, it requires that any school-level guidelines be reasonable, non-discriminatory, and respectful of students' dignity and cultural identity. Education Minister Dr. Michael Dolath stated that while schools may set grooming guidelines to support order and safety, these rules must never deny a child their right to education. The ministry emphasized that students should not be excluded from classes or school activities based solely on hairstyles or grooming concerns. It said it will continue working with schools to ensure compliance with the National Code of Conduct and the principles of inclusion and respect. And now for news on the international scene. A commuter train collided with a crane in southeastern Spain on Thursday, emergency services said, in the country's 4th rail crash in less than a week. 4 people suffered minor injuries in the crash near the port city of Cartagena in Murcia region, authorities added. The train hasn't been overturned or derailed, a spokesperson for the Mercia's Emergency Services said. The first calls about the crash came in just after noon, they added. Spain is still reeling from Sunday's high-speed train collision in the southern Andalusia region that killed at least 43 people. And 2 people have died and several are feared buried after landslides in New Zealand's North Island. The deaths were reported at Welcome Bay, while rescue workers are still searching through rubble at a different site in a popular campground on Mount Maunganui. There are no signs of life, authorities said, adding that they have a rough idea of how many people are missing but are waiting for an exact figure. They provided no other details except that the group includes at least 1 young girl. The landslides were triggered by heavy rains over the last few days, which led to flooding and power outages across the North Island. One minister said the East Coast resembled a war zone. We now take a look at the weather. Present weather across St. Kitts and Nevis, cloudy skies with showers in the vicinity. Winds a fresh breeze of 18 miles per hour from the east. Seas are 1.5 to 2.4 meters or 5 to 8 feet with swells of up to 1.8 meters or 6 feet. A high surf remains in effect for north and eastern facing coastal lines. The weather today mostly cloudy with periods of showers. Tonight mostly cloudy with periods of showers also. Sunset this evening will be at around 6 o'clock and sunrise tomorrow is set for approximately 15 minutes before 7. That brings us to the end of the Midday Major Newscast. Join us this evening for these stories and more. Thank you for tuning in. I am Jasmine Thomas. Grace be to you and peace be multiplied.